Okay guys, so what we're gonna make is of course these lights. And the fun thing about this is you can just expand it. So I have it on a curve, and with our area modifier we can essentially just expand this. So we can just move the curve around. Here, let's go here, and let's expand this area modifier. You can see that it will just follow wherever we want. So you can just put a scene totally full. As you can see here, I am in Eevee, and this also works great. So I have like a little tree and a house, and just put like curves all around, and you can even animate these. So look. So yeah, you can make like a whole living scene out of this, and yeah, it's quite easy. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so let's jump into Blender. The first thing that we kind of need is some good reference pictures, and one of the good ones I feel like is some of this. And yeah, you can see that we have a cylindrical shape, and there is a little part cut out here, and then you have this lamp on top, right? So let's just first get over to the cylindrical shape. We want to delete this, and we want to add a cylinder. By the way, the cylinder, if you just add it, you have an n-gon here, which is just very shitty to work with. So what I want to do is, if I add a cylinder, I want to also make sure the cap fill is at triangle fan. I just like to work a little bit better with this. So this needs to be scaled a bit up around the z-axis because it's more of a longer shape. And what we want to do here is we want to create these cuts in here, right? So how do we create them? Well, it's not too hard actually. You can just create a cube and then put them to the side. So the cube will be around here, and here you can also decide if you wanted to rotate a little bit like this. And to check if this is the shape that you want, you can just select your cylinder, go to modifiers and add a boolean. Now you can select the cube as boolean and hide the cube for a second, and you have your shape in here. So the shape is not really what I'm looking for right now, so I'm gonna change my cube a little bit more. So I have my cube, rotate it. I rotated it a little bit too much, I think. Let's do it like this. Hide the cube again, and here we can see our end result. So I'm fine with this. So what we want to do is we want to apply this, okay? So I'm gonna apply the boolean. I'm just gonna get rid of this cube for a second. But what you can see is if I do a shade smooth, you can see that we get some weird shading artifacts. And this is because we have, some weird n-gons in here, right? So we need to fix that. And the way I like to do it is I'm just gonna get rid of these n-gons, these on the sides, this one and this one. Gonna create a new edge loop, Ctrl R. And this edge loop for some reason doesn't end up here. That is because we also have some vertices stuck here. And I think I'm just gonna delete these vertices for right now. And just fill this up. F. Same here. I'm gonna delete these vertices. Fill this a bit up. F, 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 F. That's already better. And I want also to fill this like open part up here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertices here. Also here. So this edge loop also needs to have 5. So I'm gonna do subdivide. And then number of cuts 5. You can do this multiple ways to match these up. You can use your knife tool with K. Select them and then click on enter. Or you can delete this face. So X and then only like only faces. Now if you go back to vertices, you can see that all the vertices are still there. And just fill it up like this. And then fill this up. And the same here. So FF and FF. We can see some weird shading artifacts. I suspect it is also from our weird normals. And in this case it's not it. We can just shade smooth and that seemed to get rid of that one. And I will also go into here, object data, normals, and auto smooth. And here we have nice and sharp details. So we want it on both sides. And I didn't really want to bother with doing all of this, what I did here, on that side. So the only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to delete one of these sides. Make sure you do the side without like our detail. So delete this side and then go into modifiers, mirror, and then make sure your clipping is on and do apply. So now we have this applied, and they have on both these sides you have this nice shape. I'm going to delete this vertex, and why do I do that? Well, I want to add this nice and soft shape on top. So you can see it, we have this form, then it dips in, and then you have this softer shape on top. So I'm going to do that with a sphere. So if you select this edge loop, Shift S, and then cursor to select it, we can essentially add a UV sphere in here. It's around the same size, that is good. I'm just gonna move it a little bit up, around here, and scale it around the Z-axis a bit down until you have this nice shape which we want. So around here will be okay. Now I'm going to delete this bottom part here, and then merge them together, Ctrl J. Now I want to merge these edge loops together, so I'm selecting both these edge loops, and then click on F3, and then type in bridge edge loops. So I already have it typed here, bridge edge loops, and you can click on E, scale, Shift Z to scale that down. And here we have this nice shape. So I suspect that we have this rounded shape and then it goes flat. So I want to make that as well. What I want to do is I'm just going to select a few of these top edge loops, and then I want to scale it around the Z-axis for 0. But you can see that it doesn't really go where we want it to go, right? What I do here is I go change my pivot point from medium to active element. Then I select the lowest point in which we want everything to be like flat at. And now do scale Z0. So now everything will be flattened like at this height. Make sure you go back at medium point, otherwise you forget it. And here we have this nice shape. Very, very cool. So this is kind of the base of our light. We still want wires in here, right? So I'm gonna add another cylinder. If you have a little bit of a slower PC, just make these vertices a little bit lower, because this is gonna be duplicated over and over and over again, okay? So you might want to put this at like 16, but that's up to you. So I'm gonna keep it at 32 for right now. Move around the Z-axis, rotate, and scale a Y. So now you just have to choose the thickness of your cable, and it's around here, I think. And then I'm just going to scale it up. And then what you want to do is you want to scale it, I think around here will be good, because after this you get your other lamp here, right? Another one, another one, another one. So don't make it too far or too small. And now I want to duplicate this. But let's first delete these outer two edge like vertices. Now duplicate this, and I'm gonna move it just underneath our previous one. I don't want them to intersect with each other, just put it like underneath. And I want to join these two together, Ctrl J, but you can see that our origin is here. And I want my origin to be in the middle, because if we're gonna use our modifier, which is gonna be the simple deform, you can see that it wants to rotate around this point. So we want to twist it. This is not the right axis. But if we twist it, it's gonna try to rotate around this point, which we do not want. So I'm gonna go into edit mode, select everything with A, and then Shift S cursor to select it. So now we'll just go to the middle of all your selected parts. Now go into object mode again, go out of edit mode, and set origin to 3D cursor. So now the origin is nice in the middle. Get your simple deform modifier in here, and there are two things that we have to change. First, as you already saw, the axis is not really good. So the Z axis in my case is good because I rotated this. So now you can change the angle, but you can see that it does something weird. And it kind of gets flattened in the middle. And this is because we did not give this enough vertices to really rotate good. So I'm gonna give this, let's do a 30 amount, like a 30 number of cuts. And also in the bottom one, let's also give that 30 cuts. And you can see that it rotates very, very clean and nice now. So if you want to rotate this, you can see that we have 360 degrees. Let's also give this a shade smooth. And this 360 degrees seems to work quite well. So if we give this an array modifier, we can see how this ends up later on. So if we put this at 0, and this axis at 1, and the Z axis at 1, we can see that we have a nice continuous form. Right? So this seems to work very, very well. I'm gonna delete this array modifier for right now, and I'm gonna focus on this part. So I'm gonna move it a little bit up, and you can always change the scale a little bit if you want it longer. And I think around here will be good. And now you want to apply your simple modifier, okay? So I'm gonna apply it, and I'm happy with it, except this part here in the middle. So I'm gonna delete that part. And this top wire actually goes inside here. It's a bit hard to see in other pictures, but you can see that it goes inside of these lamps. Otherwise they have no like power, right? So I'm just gonna manually do it. And as you can see, I could have put in a little bit more time into this, but I don't want this to be too long. So I'm just gonna accept the formula that it has right now. And what I want to do now is I want to match these together. Ctrl J. Okay, so the last part that we need to add on top of here is our light. And to be honest, I did two different ones. I did one in Cycles and one in Eevee. In Cycles you can use like some more realistic glass. The problem is that in Cycles you don't have the bloom option in the render settings. You need to do it in compositing. And in Eevee that is not the case. So let's just make the Eevee version right now. I'm just gonna add another cylinder, move to the top, scale it a bit down, around here. I'm gonna delete this vertex here on top. TZ, extrude, scale. So I feel it goes a little bit like this. Now I'm gonna put my cursor there and add a UV sphere. Gonna move the bit down to around here. And then delete this bottom part. Now just bridge these edge loops together. So bridge, loop, edge loop. And I'll also create an edge loop down here. And this is essentially just the basic model that we have. So you want to join this together as well. And what you want to do now is you want to array this, right? So if we add an array modifier, let's look which axis we need. This one. It's gonna put to 1. It's gonna be at 0. You can do a certain amount of count that you want. So there's one thing that of course is not really right, and that is because you can see that they switch sides, right? Well, it goes right, left, or whatever. So what you want to do is you want to select this, Shift D, and then move it around here. So GY, and just move it around here. Make sure they match up well. GY. So now rotate it around the y-axis for 180 degrees. Move it around the z-axis. And now I'm just gonna delete 2 of these edge loops. And then just bridge these edge loops together. So now this is just one nice model, let's say. And we can array this to whatever we want, right? So now the nice thing is we can create a curve. And where is our curve? Let's scale it up. I'm gonna rotate my curve. Around here. And we can select our lights, add modifier, and do the deform curve. And we're gonna select our curve. And here you can see that it moves around the curve. So this seems weird, but if we move this a little bit to the right, you can see that they match up very nicely, right? And you can, you can just play around with these values a little bit. But if you move the curve, you can see that everything moves nice and smoothly with each other. Now you need to give it some materials. So what I did is I went into here. I actually made these cables and this plastic the same material, just to make it a bit simpler. So select them all. And we're gonna go into here and go to shade editor, new. This is gonna be our plastic material. This plastic is gonna be greenish, a bit of dark green, and fairly reflective, so 0.1. And yeah, that's kind of it for the plastic. So what you want to do is I have all of these selected which I want plastic, and then you can go here into the material section, like material properties. You can assign these vertices to this material. Now we can add a new material, and you can also click here on new, which just adds a like new nodes to our system. And we can create a light in here. I'm gonna delete this principal shader and just add an emission shader. Emission goes into the surface, and now we want these little lights to be like assigned to this material. So I'm gonna expand the selection and then assign those materials. So let's go back here, and you can see that it works great. Just if we put the strength up, we can see that we have more light in our scene, which is great, but it doesn't really bloom or like flourish the way we had in our other scene. So what you want to do here is you want to go stay in Eevee, go into render properties, and you can choose bloom. And now you can see that you can like change the threshold, you can make it brighter, you can change the radius and all that good stuff here, even the intensity. And yeah, so that is how you make these awesome crystal lights. And the only thing that I did in my other scenes is I gave them different colors. And yeah, that's kind of it. So the last thing that I want to show is if you want to render this in Blender cycles. Okay, so if you want to render this in cycles, you have to do it a little bit differently. And let's first look at our model. What I did here is I actually also modeled this underneath. So if I hide this, you can see that I even modeled this part which is inside the lamp. This is not really needed, but this gives a more realistic effect. So that is what I did there. I also changed a few of the materials. So I made the emission, I made this little cord in here emissive. And for this material, I literally just made a glass material with a little bit of roughness. And the plastic is kind of the same. I didn't do anything special about that. So if you render this, let me render it at a quite low subdivision. When you normally render this with just the emission, we do have some, we don't have any glow. And you can of course see all these fireflies, and that's just because I rendered it at a low sample rate. But that aside, if you actually go into the compositor, which is down here, you can see that I have some of these nodes, and you can see glare. So what the glare essentially does, it kind of blooms, it glares our emission, right? So if I go here and change this to my viewer node, you can see what happens when there is glare added to this. So let me actually change this to our image editor, and here you have the viewer node, right? So when you normally start the compositor editor, you have just this, okay? Then we add a viewer node, and this viewer node essentially, yeah, you can see now that the picture disappeared, but if we put this image into the image of the viewer node, you can see that this ends up in our viewer, right? You can also see it here. We're not in our render result, we are in our viewer node. And what I wanted to add is a glare. So there are multiple options here, as you can see, but let's just put this one in first. And here you can see streaks. And this is really how you add extra glare to your scene. So you have streaks, you have fog glow, which I also used, and then you can play around with these values. You can put the threshold a bit lower. If you go too low though, you gotta be careful, because then it lights up the whole scene. So we have some of this fog glow in here, and I also want the other glow that we had. So if we put a glare, you can just put multiple glares, right? You can just add them together. I'm not really good with the compositor in Blender, to be honest, but this is how you add glow in cycles. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this, and yeah, subscribe, like, all that shebang, and I love you.